Everybody, you're right, man. After some technical difficulty, I'm here. I'm glad that it ended up working out. I worked in tech for 20 years and still have technical difficulties, but we're here. So, if you don't know me, I'm Nicole Kruger of She Builds Health. We're here for the Calm and Nourished Mom series. This is a series that I created just to help moms kind of get some of the basics under the belt, diet, sleep, rest, exercise, movement, stress reduction. If moms, I find that my clients, if we can get those things under, I don't want to say under control, but maybe like better regulated, so many things start to clear up for them. They don't have as much of the anxiety, the overwhelm, the panic, just the irritability, kind of those things that kind of feel like they come with motherhood. If we can start taking better care of ourselves with these kind of simple um little ways to take care of ourselves, we can kind of show better for our families, and that's what I want to help you do. So this week we are going to expand on what we talked about last week we talked about starting our day with protein to help regulate blood sugar. And protein's not just important for breakfast, and I'm not going to like diet talk you to death here or nutrition talk you to death in this series, but we're typically going to rotate through topics. But for these first two, I am sticking with nutrition because if we can get these two kind of on par, we can move forward with other things a little bit better. So before we get started, medical disclaimer: I'm not a doctor. FDN practitioners do not diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure disease or conditions. Nothing we share with our clients is intended to substitute for the advice, treatment, or diagnosis from your qualified licensed physician. So I'm just here as a teacher. I'm here to teach you how to take better care of your body. But if something doesn't feel right, run it by your physician. Also, something that I want to note, and I know last week on Tuesday, I went live in the Facebook group and talked about good, better, best. It was kind of a hot disaster. But ultimately, what I was trying to get across was I will let you know what is ideal. And I don't always expect you to start with what's ideal, right? Like start where you are and make little incremental changes. That's why we go 2 weeks between sessions, because I want to give you 2 weeks to implement the teachings from that session. So last week we talked about the importance of having like 30 grams of protein with breakfast, getting some antioxidants, fiber in there, and eating that within about 90 minutes of waking. And then you had 2 weeks to kind of work on that, right? So now what we want to do is we want to talk about protein for the rest of our day. And sometimes women like to push back on this because we've sort of been taught like to eat light, right? To eat salads and smoothies, and to focus on those lighter foods. But we do need protein, and we'll get into why in a little bit here. But the recommendations that I make for the amounts of protein, if you're nowhere near that, don't feel defeated or discouraged. Just start where you're at and then start making incremental changes. That's what this whole series is about being gentle with ourselves and making changes that are sustainable. So, um, before we move forward, though, let me know if you did start eating breakfast or if you did make tweaks to your breakfast, like increase the protein, start eating closer to your waking time. Let me know how that made you feel. Let me know in the comments if you noticed any differences in how you felt. And then we're just going to get moving forward. So most women that I talk to and most women that are my clients are under eating protein. A lot of women come to me, they're eating about 40 to 60 grams of protein a day, and that is not enough. It's just not enough for our bodies to maintain the things that our bodies need to maintain. Some signs of low protein, so constant hunger. If you find that you're constantly hungry or grazing or always thinking about what, food or the next meal, sugar cravings is another big one. Fatigue and mood swings. Hair loss is a big one. Poor skin, poor nails, trouble sleeping, low muscle tone. So muscle is protein, right? We need to consume protein to build muscle and to maintain our muscle, especially as we start to age. So when we hit our 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, each year we start to just naturally lose muscle mass, and we really need to work to keep that. And if we're not eating enough protein, it's our body will get the protein from our muscle mass. It's called catabolism. It'll break down our own muscle, our skeletal muscle, to get what it needs so it can produce the things that it needs to produce with those amino acids from the proteins. Also poor recovery. So if you find that you're working out or having a hard time like going for long walks, it's not the only thing that can be the cause of that, but low protein diet can just have that lower recovery, like sore longer after movement, after exercise. And then that can kind of keep us from wanting to do those things. And those are health building activities we don't want to avoid. Okay, so what protein does in the body? A lot of people who talk about protein, they'll talk about it in relation to what I just talked about, which was skeletal muscle, right? So we need to eat protein to maintain our skeletal muscle, which is true. But what they don't often talk about is the other aspects, the other things that protein is important for in our body. So one we talked about last week, blood sugar balance, right? But it's not just important for blood sugar balance at breakfast. It's important for blood sugar balance at every meal, every snack. So it slows digestion and it flattens those glucose spikes. That's how it helps regulate the blood sugar. It also helps with neurotransmitter production. Not all neurotransmitters are produced from proteins, but many of them are. And without adequate protein, our body doesn't have the building blocks that it needs to produce these neurotransmitters. Same with hormones. Again, not all of our hormones are produced from proteins, but many of them are. And we need the protein to produce those hormones. Enzymes are the same thing. So when we eat food, our pancreas releases digestive enzymes. Those enzymes need amino acids, which amino acids are just the building blocks of proteins. They need those amino acids to produce our enzymes. And enzymes are involved in every reaction in our body, not just digestion, but those are the ones that people tend to be most familiar with. We need it for muscle and metabolism. Protein supports your muscle. Your muscle is your metabolic engine, especially in perimenopause. So especially like 35, 40, 45 and beyond. The more skeletal muscle you have, the higher your metabolism is. And if you're doing like strength training exercise and working out, but you're not eating enough protein, you're not going to be able to build muscle nearly as efficiently as if you were eating protein. So, and then the last thing that it helps with, well, not the last thing, but the last thing we're going to cover today is satiety and craving. So I mentioned that previously. You'll naturally eat less food when you're properly nourished with protein. And here's why. Our body knows it needs protein. It needs protein to do all the things that I just discussed and then some. So when we have enough protein in our diet, our hunger cues are silenced a little bit more because our body's like, oh, I have what I need, right? I have the building blocks that I need. Same with fat. So we need fat. That's not the topic of this, but we need fat for our cell membranes, for producing sex hormones, for a variety of things. And when we have enough of that, that will help with satiety too. So really focusing on getting that protein. And I really, really prefer animal proteins. And we'll get into what the proteins are in a moment, like what foods are considered higher protein foods. But once you get the protein that you need, our bodies are intelligently designed, right? So once we have that macronutrient that we need to do all the things, right, to create the brain chemicals and the hormones and to help us balance the blood sugar and to help us produce our enzymes and our muscle and our metabolism, all those things are very important to a healthy functioning body. Once we have those, again, those like cravings and those junk cues and those like the junk food cues, the junk food cravings tend to go away more. Um, so when we talk about proteins, I'm assuming up to this point that everybody knows what I'm talking about from our last session or just in general. But when we're talking about proteins, I mostly am talking about animal proteins. It does not mean that there is not protein in other foods. You can get protein. I mean, there's proteins in everything, in like plants and in animal products, but the protein is not as bioavailable in plant products. So anything that comes from a plant. So like people will tout like black beans and brown rice and like soybeans and soy is its own whole other demon that I don't like soy for its estrogenic effects. It's a phytoestrogen and I don't like soy for hormonal purposes, but rabbit trail. So the proteins, one, they're not as bioavailable. Two, they're just not as high in protein. So a cup of black beans, I should have looked this up. I believe a cup of black beans has like 8 grams of protein. Don't quote me. I can look it up and I'll put it in the comments. But where 4 ounces of chicken breast has like 30 grams of protein. And we're looking for, and again, this is where I said the recommendations I make are more ideal. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. Just slowly work up there. But we're looking for a minimum of 30 grams of protein per meal. So then that's where we'll shift next. So we'll talk about how much protein do you need, right? So you're saying we'll eat more protein. How much do I need? So the general recommended target is 0.8 grams to 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. So if you weigh 180 pounds, but your ideal body weight is 150 pounds, we would use that 150 pounds. You're not going to have to eat 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight for that 180 pounds. You would do it for that ideal weight. So using a 150-pound woman, that would be 100 to 120 grams of protein a day for the 120 to 150 grams of protein a day for the range. Now, 150 grams can feel kind of daunting to some people, but 120 grams of protein is doable. It's doable. But if you're starting at 40 or 60, if you're starting at that range, just start to get curious. Like, what can I eat for lunch? What can I eat for dinner? We already know what to eat for breakfast, right? We have some ideas there, but what can I eat for the other meals of the day that are going to support my body in this way? And we don't want to eat it all at once, which would be difficult to do anyway. We definitely want to spread it throughout the day so that 30 grams per meal, 40 grams would be okay too, 30, 40. I mean, depending on what you're eating, it could even be upwards of 50. And then you might at first have to even consider layering, like if you're having snacks throughout the day, having those be more protein-based snacks like hard-boiled eggs, string cheese. I have like a protein coffee. That's what this, I have collagen in my coffee. The milk has protein in it. Um, and this is like a snack that I'll have before I have my lunch. And then that will help to, add that protein to my day. So I think this has 10, 12, 22 grams of protein in my coffee. That definitely goes a long way in helping me hit my protein goal for the day. So, like one egg has 6 grams of protein, like we talked about for breakfast last week, or for a snack. 3 ounces of chicken is about 25 grams, boneless, skinless chicken breast. So, if you're thinking there, or going with 4 ounces, steak. And if you're going with the leaner cuts of meat, the leaner cuts of meat are higher in protein. So, 99% lean turkey breast, boneless, skinless chicken breast. 93% lean ground beef. This doesn't mean you can't have the fattier meats, but if you're looking for the meats that are higher in protein, those are the ones that are a little bit higher in protein. Then there's dairy products too, like we talked about cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, or supplementing with a protein shake. Now, it is not ideal to get your main protein for your meal from a protein shake. We really want to be focusing on whole foods. Our body knows what to do with whole food. We were designed to eat whole, nutritious foods. Protein powder is a supplement, and it is meant to be used supplementally to help you get to your goals. And as you can see, I use it too. I have it in my coffee right now, and I'm okay with that. We do just want to make sure that we're getting it in our meals as we eat those meals. So, okay, so remember, and you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect at this. And the way that you know how much protein you're eating, and you might want to track it a little bit. I mean, you don't have to use a tracking app, but like writing down on a piece of paper, keeping track, like doing the mental math. Okay, I had 3 eggs for breakfast. That's 18 grams of protein. Plus, I put a scoop of collagen in my coffee. That's another 10. I had 28 grams of protein for breakfast, right? Write that down. And this will get easier as you go. So the reason I remember these things is because I've been doing this for so long, and I don't keep track on a piece of paper. I very rarely keep track on a piece of paper. I just know at this point. I know I'm gonna have 4 ounces of meat for my lunch. I'm gonna have 4 ounces of turkey or chicken, or you could do pork. I personally am not a fan of pork, but you could do, pork. It's a personal preference, not that I have a problem with pork. I just don't like the flavor. Ground beef, venison, fish, any of the seafood like shrimp, very high. Shrimp, whitefish are very high in protein. Salmon is high in protein. So just knowing if I have a 4 ounce serving, it's probably going to be in that 20 to 30 range. If it's a low fat meat, like a lean cut of meat, it's going to be closer to the 30 grams for a 4 ounce serving. It's not exactly the same across the board, but you could just kind of guess. Flip over the back of that package. You go to buy shrimp, flip it over, look and see how much shrimp do I need to eat to get to 30 grams of protein, or how many fillets of, oh, what is the fish that we get? We get flounder. How many fillets of flounder? How many ounces of flounder do I need to have? And it'll probably tell you like one fillet is about this many ounces. So if you have two fillets of flounder, then you have your, your 4 ounces. And again, this isn't, I don't want you to go into this with a like militant, and this is what I have to do. Go into it being curious and like, how do I get this protein in my day? Like, I believe this is what's going to be best for my body, but how am I going to do this? And how am I going to incorporate it? And being curious and giving yourself grace and allowing, days where you're just not going to get it. It took me a long time to get up to, to figure out how to get this amount of protein in my diet because I don't even like meat really. I just don't like the texture or the taste of it. So it took me a lot to figure out how do I do this? I found the meats that worked for me, the textures that worked for me. Um, I found the ways to make them feel or to make them taste better to me. And that's just, that's just how I did it. So give yourself grace. You're going to have 2 weeks to start to implement this before we move on to our next step. But here's the beautiful thing. The next step, we're going to shift to a totally different topic. So I want you to continue working on your breakfast. Like, don't go, oh, I did that. Now I'm done and I'm not doing that anymore. And now I'm going to work on breakfast and lunch. No, we're layering in these habits. So now hopefully we have some practice with breakfast. Probably not perfect. Nobody is, right? But we have some practice with breakfast. We kind of know how to do that. Keep doing that, but now start layering in the extra things. So now maybe this week you go, how am I going to get my dinner to be that? And that's what I usually recommend. Like focus on dinner first and eat leftover lunch or leftover dinner for your lunch the next day. So then it's like, oh, okay, well, I bought 93% lean ground beef. I made 4 ounce patties. I know that's about 28 grams of protein. And I'm having it for dinner tonight. I'm going to have one left over for lunch tomorrow. And I'm going to put a slice of cheese on it. And that's going to give me an extra couple grams of protein. And I'm going to, have a collagen coffee, just kind of come up with your things where you're like, I know these are the things I'm going to do. And I know that this works, or like a piece of string cheese or, something along those lines. The foods that have protein. So you're looking at dairy, animal products like eggs, muscle meat. Those are really the primary proteins that I'm talking about. Okay. So then what I want you to do is as you're doing this, I want you to pay attention to how you feel. I want you to let your body tell you, how does this make you feel? How does this change? How does giving your body adequate protein make you feel? Does it make you less cravey in the evenings? Does it make you want to head to the freezer for ice cream less often or to the pantry for granola bars and goldfish crackers? Does it make it so you're not craving those foods when you're getting that protein for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Is it helping your cravings? Is it helping your mood? Is it helping to balance things out? Are you sleeping better? Um, are you feeling stronger? Or at least like you can get through your day without being fatigued and exhausted. I really want you to pay attention to those things and write them in a journal or let us know in the group. Like share those wins in the group because this is why we're here. We're here to learn new habits that will help us feel calm and be nourished, right? So we can show up for our families the way that we want to show up for them. Okay, so action step for the week. I want you to keep track of your protein. You can just do this on a piece of paper. Like I said, if you want to use an app, Cronometer is my favorite app, but sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming to people to use Cronometer. So, I mean, like pen and paper, right? That's how I tracked forever. Pen and paper. Keep track of your protein intake for 3 days and aim for at least 100 grams a day. You can do your calculation if you want to of the 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per lean body weight. You can do that calculation if you want to, but really for now, all I want you to do is try to track your protein intake for 3 days and aim for at least 100 grams a day. So if you're hitting 60 grams now, that's great. Aim for 70 to 80 next week. Okay. You don't have to aim for that full 100. We're going to start where we're at. We're going to track it and we're going to like work our way up. And then don't forget about the food. So the foods, like I had mentioned, if you have a burger, that's about, let's say 28 grams of protein. Now don't quote me, look at your own packaging. But if you add a piece of cheese to that, that is adding protein to it. So any animal product, or if you add beans, like when we sometimes have Mexican bowls with like shredded chicken, beans, and rice, that shredded chicken is protein, but that beans and rice does count towards my protein. It's not going to give me the 30 grams that I'm looking for, but it's going to round me up to what I'm looking for, right? So So start where you're at, find out where you're at, and then aim to go higher. And then share a picture. Share a picture of, if you're doing it on a piece of paper, share a picture of the piece of paper on Facebook, like your little log. Um, or if you're doing Cronometer, take a screenshot of Cronometer and show us where you're at. And then what I'm going to do is I will share, my family has a couple of go-to meals, right? I understand that we're not all necessarily accustomed to eating this way. And I wasn't either. So my family has a couple of go-to meals. We don't all even like the same thing. So sometimes I'm a picky eater. Some of my kids are picky eaters, or they just don't like certain foods. So we do things like bowls a lot, where you're like constructing your own, like a taco bowl, a Mexican bowl, a Greek bowl, a burger bowl. And what I always do is I start with my 4 ounces of meat, and then I add the other things in there that I want. Or if there's going to be other foods that include protein in the meal, I might do 3 ounces of meat. But that's just because I'll get too full and I won't finish it. Otherwise, I would still do the 4 ounces. I'll share a couple of recipes of my family's favorite go-tos. You can take them, you can tweak them. I did share a recipe in a reel in the group for one of my favorite. It's turkey breakfast sausage. I brown it up like taco meat. And I don't just have it for breakfast. I do use it in breakfast. I'll use it in scrambled eggs or in an egg bake, but I also use it just like for a throw together meal, like some either a little bit of pasta or some zucchini noodles. I'll dump some of that protein on it, or that, I'm sorry, that turkey on it, and then pour some marinara sauce on it. It's like a quick meal, or I'll use it in a Greek bowl or in a taco bowl or something along those lines. So I will share some of those recipes throughout the next couple of weeks in the group with you. If you have any questions, please post them below. And if you've asked questions during the video, I will go back and get them. There is a delay between Zoom and the Facebook group, so I can't always see that. But anyway, thank you so much for being here with us. Watch the group for recipes, and please post your wins. You can continue to post your breakfast wins, but also post your protein tracking to see, like, what are you actually eating? And again, remember, there's no shame. If you're starting out and you're eating 30 grams of protein, that's okay. Let's just work on getting it increased so you can start to feel better. Have a great week, guys.